You didn't fall behind because you stopped trying. The world didn't reject you. It simply stopped waiting for you. You fell behind because no one told you you were no longer part of the conversation. That's the thing about being left out. It doesn't announce itself. There's no meeting where someone explains you've been replaced, no moment where the door officially closes. You just keep showing up, contributing, staying busy, and slowly, quietly, the decisions that matter start happening without you. It's not dramatic. It's barely even noticeable at first. You're still included in the group chat, still invited to some things, still doing work that feels important. But somewhere along the way, the center shifted. The real conversations moved to a different room. The opportunities you thought you were building toward got handed to someone else, and by the time you realize it, everyone's already 3 steps ahead. This isn't about effort. It's not about talent or how hard you work. It's about something far more uncomfortable, realizing that your presence stopped changing anything. You became optional, replaceable, not because you failed, but because the world learned to keep moving whether you were there or not. And the worst part, you might still be busy. Does it sound familiar to you? Progress doesn't send a warning. It doesn't wait for you to catch up or ask if you're ready. It happens in the smallest shifts you don't even register until they've already reshaped everything around you. Someone stops asking for your input. A project moves forward without your name attached. A conversation you assumed you'd be part of starts and finishes before you even knew it existed. You tell yourself it's nothing, just bad timing, just coincidence, huh? But then it happens again and again, and at some point, you stop being surprised and start being quiet about it, because admitting it out loud makes it real. The truth is clear. Most people don't get left behind in one catastrophic moment. They get left behind in 1,000 tiny ones, moments where the rhythm of everything else speeds up just enough that they can't quite match it anymore. And because they're still doing something, still involved in some version of forward motion, they never stop to ask the one question that actually matters. Is any of this moving me? If that question makes you uncomfortable, stay here, because what comes next might be the only thing that actually explains why some people advance while you stay exactly where you are. You could vanish tomorrow, and everything would still run exactly the same. Not because you're incompetent, not because you're invisible, but because you've been operating in a space designed to function with or without you. The work gets done, the meetings happen, the projects move forward. Your name is attached to things, sure, but if it wasn't, nothing would actually stop. That realization doesn't hit like failure, it hits like redundancy. You're present, active, even reliable, but you're not the reason anything happens. You're filling a slot that exists whether you're in it or not. Someone else could slide into your exact position tomorrow morning, and by lunch, no one would remember the transition. Can you see it happening in your life? This is where most people get stuck. They confuse participation with relevance. They think staying busy proves they matter, but mattering and being busy are 2 entirely different coordinates on the map. One exhausts you. The other anchors you. The people moving ahead aren't necessarily outworking you. They're not always smarter or more prepared, but they've figured out something you haven't yet. They've placed themselves where their absence creates friction, where things don't flow smoothly unless they're involved, where decisions pile up waiting for them instead of rolling past them. You haven't positioned yourself there. And the longer you stay busy in spaces that don't require you, the harder it becomes to recognize what necessity even looks like. You start thinking effort equals progress, that showing up equals advancing, that doing more automatically means becoming more important. It doesn't. It just means you're tired in a place that forgot to need you. The gap between you and the people pulling ahead isn't about hours worked or skills acquired. It's about whether the system you're in would notice if you stopped existing within it. And if the honest answer is no, then everything you're doing right now is just noise disguised as movement. The people who advance don't work in a different world. They work in a different position within the same world, and that position isn't earned through merit alone. It's earned by proximity to the places where things get decided, redefined, or set into motion. While you're executing tasks downstream, they're sitting upstream, where the current itself gets redirected. This isn't about hierarchy, it's about centrality. Some people end up in rooms where the next 6 months get shaped. Others end up in rooms where the next 6 months get explained after the fact. Both groups work hard, both contribute, but only one group touches the decisions before they become instructions. You can be excellent at what you do and still be positioned where excellence doesn't extract value. Your skills get applied to problems already framed, solutions already scoped, outcomes already determined by someone 3 levels removed from the work itself. You execute beautifully, but execution was never the bottleneck. Direction was, and direction belongs to whoever got there first. Here's what no one admits: competence can trap you. And that's hard to admit, right? The better you get at your current position, the more the system needs you to stay exactly there. You become too valuable to move because moving you would disrupt something already functioning. So they leave you in place, appreciate your output, and route the next opportunity around you without ever saying why. The ones pulling ahead didn't outwork that trap. They never entered it. They position themselves where decisions accumulate instead of where decisions get executed, where people come to them before anything is finalized, where their input doesn't improve a plan, it creates one. And the part that stings, they didn't get there by being better than you. They got there by recognizing earlier that the system rewards proximity to power far more than it rewards proficiency at distance. You're still perfecting your craft. They're already deciding what the craft gets used for. Staying busy might be the most effective way to avoid noticing you've become irrelevant. When your calendar is full, when there's always another task waiting, when you're constantly in motion, it feels like proof that you matter. You're needed, you're involved, you're part of things. But busyness creates a specific kind of blindness, and this changes everything. It keeps you looking at what's directly in front of you instead of what's happening around you. You're so focused on completing the next item that you don't notice the invitations that stopped coming. The conversations that move to channels you're no longer in. The decisions being made in meetings you didn't know were scheduled. Activity becomes a buffer against awareness. As long as you're doing something, you can tell yourself you're moving forward. You can point to your contributions, your effort, your commitment, and all of that might be true. But none of it answers the question you're not asking. Does any of this place you where things actually shift? The cruel part is that being constantly occupied delays the reckoning. You don't have time to step back and assess whether you're central or just present, whether you're shaping what happens next or just responding to what already happened. The rhythm of constant work protects you from realizing that rhythm stopped mattering weeks ago. People who've moved past you aren't necessarily working less, but they've built space to notice when the current changes direction. They see when the center relocates, when new patterns form, when the next wave starts building before it's visible to everyone else. And because they're not buried under the weight of staying busy, they can reposition before it's too late. You're still catching up to the last shift. They're already riding the next one. And the distance between those two positions doesn't close just because you're working harder. It closes when you finally stop long enough to realize you've been running in place. Nobody owes you an explanation for why you stopped being considered. That's the part that makes it unbearable. You keep waiting for the conversation where someone tells you what changed, what you missed, what you could have done differently. But that conversation never comes, because nothing actually went wrong. Do you agree? You didn't mess up. You didn't burn bridges. You didn't fail at anything specific enough to point to. You just gradually became someone the world stopped accounting for when it made its next move. Not out of malice, not even out of intention, just out of momentum that built around other people instead of you. The system doesn't need to justify your exclusion because it never formalized your inclusion. You were there, participating, contributing, but participation isn't a contract. It's not a guarantee. And the moment something or someone more central appears, the system reorganizes around that new gravity without announcing the shift. This is what makes being left behind so disorienting. You can't argue against it because there's nothing to argue against. No decision was made, no meeting occurred, no policy changed. The world just recalibrated, and when it finished recalibrating, you were further from the center than you used to be. Some people sense this early. They feel the slight change in temperature, the small delay before responses come, the invitations that arrive later or not at all. They adjust quickly, reposition, recalibrate themselves before the gap becomes permanent. But most people don't notice until the gap is already too wide to cross casually. And by then, you're not recovering lost ground. You're trying to re-enter a system that's already closing behind the people who moved faster. No one's blocking you, but no one's holding space for you either. You're still welcome to participate. You're just no longer expected to. That's not failure. That's something worse. That's irrelevance without cause. Advancement happens where consequences exist. Not where things feel important, not where effort gets praised, but where your actions directly alter what happens next in ways that can't be undone or ignored. Most people stay active in environments where nothing they do carries real weight. They contribute to projects that would conclude either way. They participate in discussions that resolve regardless of their input. They stay busy in spaces carefully designed to absorb effort without translating it into leverage. The people moving ahead didn't stumble into higher stakes environments. They gravitated toward friction, toward places where decisions create immediate visible impact, where choosing wrong costs something, where their judgment gets tested against reality instead of reviewed by committees that smooth out every sharp edge before anything reaches the world. This is why readiness is a trap. You keep preparing, accumulating skills, waiting until you feel fully capable before stepping into spaces where things actually matter. But capability built in low-stakes environments doesn't transfer cleanly to high-stakes ones. You've been practicing in conditions that forgive hesitation, reward caution, and celebrate incremental refinement. None of that prepares you for environments where speed matters more than polish and conviction matters more than consensus. The gap widens because they're operating where every move teaches them something non-transferable. How to make calls with incomplete information, how to recover when things break, how to move forward when there's no clear right answer. You're still optimizing in a controlled setting, perfecting skills that matter less the further you get from the center. Worse, you might not even recognize these high-consequence spaces when you see them. They don't always look prestigious. They don't always come with better titles or bigger teams. Sometimes they're just the unglamorous places where real decisions get made under pressure, where someone has to choose and live with what happens next. And while you're still preparing to be ready, someone else is already learning by being wrong in ways that actually matter. Being left behind doesn't feel like falling. It feels like waking up one day and realizing the story you've been telling yourself about where you are no longer matches where you actually are. You thought you were building towards something. You thought your trajectory was still intact. But somewhere between the last time you checked and now, the gap between your internal narrative and external reality became too wide to ignore. This isn't failure. Failure has a moment, a specific point where something breaks and you know exactly what went wrong. This is different. This is the slow recognition that while you were focused on your progress, the finish line moved, the rules changed. The people you were keeping pace with aren't in the same race anymore, and no one told you when the new one started. You replay the last few months, searching for the turning point, the moment you missed, the decision that locked you out. But there isn't one. Just a series of small shifts that felt like nothing at the time, an email thread you weren't included on, a project that launched without your input, a conversation that happened in a room you didn't know existed. each one dismissible on its own, devastating in accumulation. What makes this unbearable isn't the distance itself, it's realizing the distance grew while you were still convinced you were moving forward. You weren't stagnant, you weren't lazy, you were active, engaged, contributing, and still imperceptibly you drifted further from where things were actually happening. The world didn't announce your displacement because it didn't register as displacement. From the outside, you're still present, still involved. But from the inside, you know something fundamental shifted. You're no longer someone the next phase is being built around. You're someone the next phase will inform once it's already in motion. And that realization doesn't arrive as anger or injustice. It arrives as a quiet, sinking understanding that you've been operating on outdated coordinates. Staying busy preserves something valuable, your dignity. It's harder to feel left behind when you can point to a full schedule, completed tasks, tangible output. You're not sitting idle. You're not giving up. You're contributing, participating, staying in motion. And that motion creates the appearance of forward progress, even when it's not taking you anywhere that matters. But here's what activity can't protect you from: becoming optional. You can be constantly present and still not be part of what happens next. You can execute flawlessly and still not be considered when the next opportunity forms, because presence and consideration are two entirely separate things, and confusing them is how people spend years working hard in places that stopped planning around them. The ones who moved ahead didn't work themselves into relevance. They positioned themselves where their absence would disrupt something that mattered to someone with power, where skipping them created friction no one wanted to deal with. Where including them was easier than explaining why they weren't included. You didn't do that. You stayed useful in ways that kept things comfortable for everyone else. You made yourself easy to work with, easy to rely on, easy to keep exactly where you are. And now the system has learned it doesn't need to promote you to keep benefiting from you. What's coming next in this video will make you uncomfortable, because it's not about working smarter or harder. It's not about fixing what you're doing wrong. It's about recognizing that some gaps don't close through effort. They close through a completely different understanding of how progress actually works. Staying occupied kept you from seeing that understanding earlier, but you're seeing it now, and what you do with that awareness is the only thing that determines whether this pattern continues or whether you finally step out of the circuit that's been running you in place. Some people don't move ahead because they tried harder. They move ahead because the world learned to move with them, not around them, not past them, with them. They became part of the current instead of something the current had to work around. You've been trying to earn your way into that position, but it's not earned through output. It's claimed through positioning, through proximity, through placing yourself where decisions form instead of where they land. And the longer you wait for the system to recognize your effort, the further you drift from the rooms where recognition even matters. This isn't about blame. It's not about what you should have done differently. It's about what you do now that you see the gap clearly. Now that you understand why staying busy kept you blind, now that you know the difference between being present and being considered. If this shifted something in you, don't let that shift fade. Subscribe so you don't lose this clarity. Share this with someone who needs to hear it before they spend another year moving without advancing. And drop a comment with the moment that hit hardest, because recognition is the first step toward repositioning. The world won't wait for you to be ready. It never does.